so early in the morning. Although I guess it's not really
Well,
that early when
by
you have a
some
child at the
miracle,
end of
the
the day.
baby is asleep, so this is a good timing.
Awesome. Yeah, so I guess we'll just start with Father's Day in general. For Canadians who want to celebrate and see their dads and their grandfathers this weekend, like what do they have to be mindful of?
It's the same as always, right? We have to make sure that the people interacting are vaccinated, first of all. Assuming that people have had two doses, that's ideal. You can probably meet indoors without masks if you've both got two doses. But if you haven't, and most people haven't, then we have to maintain those mitigation tools. So the Ontario guidelines are pretty good. Right now, meeting outdoors is perfectly safe. Well, not perfectly safe, but as safe as you can possibly be. Patios are fantastic. Just no wet kisses. I think hugs are fine if you're facing away from each other and wearing masks. It comes down to several factors. One is how vaccinated all the participants are, whether it's one versus two doses or no doses. And two is the burden of disease in the community. If it's high, then you can't do a lot of things because that's when infection breaks through vaccination defense. But if it's low and people are vaccinated, I think it's pretty safe for most activities.
Mhm. There was a couple outbreaks in Waterloo where I am, putting us and Timmins and a couple other hotspots on kind of alert this this week. So for people living in those areas where maybe the spread is more present in the community, we have to take more care. Is that
That's right.
fair to
That's
say?
right. That's the message that I think is not getting through well enough. Vaccination is fantastic, but it's not perfect. And the extent to which vaccination fails is dependent entirely on the presence of the disease. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, wearing rain boots in a flooded area. If the floodwaters are high enough, they get over the lip of your boots and get your feet wet. But if they're not high enough, the
Mm-hmm.
boots are fine. So vaccination are like boots protecting you against the wetness. So long as the disease presence isn't above a certain level, the vaccines will protect most people. But in hotspot areas like Porcupine,
Mm-hmm.
you got to take extra care. That's when the disease finds holes in our defenses.
Right. I guess with when children are involved, especially young children who aren't eligible to receive the vaccine yet, um, with like bringing them to see their grandfather on Father's Day, uh, is there, I don't know, is there
Yeah,
concern with that?
there is
Like,
concern.
yeah.
There is concern. So let's consider the scenario in which the grandfather has had two doses. You might like to think that they're bulletproof now. But if you're in one of these hot zone areas, the child might be an asymptomatic carrier and now presents a potential infection risk to the grandparent. Now, the probability is low. The vaccine offer pretty good protection. This is a scenario in which there's an opportunity now to test whether or not that grandparent is one of the handful for whom the vaccine didn't work. Do you really want to
Mm-hmm.
roll that dice? Um, so it's not advisable, but you can take the child to see the grandparent for a distance visit, with both parties wearing masks, for example, or outdoors. So there are ways to do this while to have the visit that is comfortable and loving and fun while mitigating risk.
Mm-hmm.
We know that the Delta variant, of course, is a thing everyone's talking about, and there is some data suggesting that children carry just as much viral load as adults. So kids aren't magical unicorns that can't pass this on. They definitely can. But again, this is,
Mm-hmm.
every day it's getting better. And this is one of those holidays where we're going to take maybe a little less care than we would have 2, 3 months ago, but care should still be taken.
Right. I was going to ask about the Delta variant. Like, how does it complicate things, especially for people who've only had one dose of the vaccine so far?
Right. So, as everyone knows now, one dose offers about 33% protection against the Delta variant, two doses up to almost 90%. So, it's a huge gap there. What it means is you can't pretend that one dose has given you sufficient protection. The one dose strategy is a population strategy, is to get sufficient population immunity so the disease doesn't find penetration into the community. But what that means for individuals is the risk to individuals remains fairly robust. It's a difficult concept for people to wrap their brains around. And the opposite is kind of true for 2 doses. The protection for individuals is kind of robust, but for the population, it depends on the number of people who've had 2 doses. So to answer the question more simply, for people who've had 1 dose, you can't throw caution to the wind. You got to maintain those mitigation tools like the distancing and the mask wearing. But at the same time, you should feel free to see your loved ones, but in a safe way.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any plans for Father's Day this weekend?
Honestly, until I got your email, I'd forgotten that Father's Day was happening. So,
I thought it was the Sunday that just passed. Like that's where my head was at. So,
it's not something I think about. But I have an elderly father, and surely I'll be calling him. He's in Toronto, and I'm not sure whether my spouse has plans for me. We'll see what happens. I don't really care. But it's my second ever Father's Day. And This is the first one was 1 month into being a father. So both of my Father's Days have been in pandemic. And I think this will be the last one that happens in the pandemic. So maybe I should make a note of that. Maybe I should celebrate the fact that this will be the end of my pandemic Father's Days. And celebrate in some strange way.
Yeah, how was the first Father's Day?
It was surreal because I was not ready to be a father. Well, it's not true. I was still getting used to the idea of being a father. This time around, it is acceptable and comfortable. But let's make this more manageable for a newspaper article. It's a reminder of responsibility. Mm-hmm. And as an epidemiologist in a pandemic, you feel a lot of responsibility. And the lesson for greater society is, guess what? The responsibility for getting rid of this pandemic still falls upon each of us individually. So parenthood is responsibility. And while we celebrate things like Mother's Day and Father's Day, they are reminders of work that must yet to be done. So I'll be the guy who has the downer message.
So your baby is 13 months? 12 months now?
No, May 14th. That takes us to, I guess, 13 months, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. What's his name? If you don't want to share it.
His name's Harrison. First name is Harrison.
Harrison. Oh, cute. Oh, it's a cute name. I guess, what have you learned about yourself through having to be a father during the pandemic, especially the first year of Harrison's life?
Before being a father, I wouldn't have said let the world burn, but I would have been cognizant of the fact that my time on this planet is ending. I'm in the second half of my life probably. And so, it's not really my job to preserve the world as much as perhaps I feel now. Others have said this, but I'm a big fan of David Bowie, who said, we don't own the world, our children own the world. And that's true. That really is driven home when you become a parent. You're preserving the world for your child until they can become stewards of the world. And so you feel the depth of the responsibility more deeply. So when this pandemic began, I've talked about this many times in media, I did the math and I realized just how deep the problem was. And I lay in the fetal position for a few hours until my spouse found me, because the world had not figured out what a bunch of epidemiologists had figured out, that this is not a few weeks, this is a few months, if not years. And then I felt the burden of responsibility because I was about to be a father. And I realized, my son is going to ask me one day, hey, epidemiologist dad, what did you do to combat the great pandemic of 2020? And so I got up and did whatever I could do. Had it not been for the fact that I was about to have a child, I'm not sure I would have found the wherewithal and the instigation, the impulse, the motivation to actually do what I've done. Whether I've done anything of worth, I'm not so sure. But to the extent I've done anything, that was instigated almost entirely by being a new father.
Mm-hmm. Was there, with a lot of us working from home, fathers are spending more time with their children than they probably normally would. Was there a moment over this past year and a bit where you thought, wow, I'm glad I was home for this?
Yes. Every single day I think this. Now I'm a lucky one. I'm not poor. I have a well-employed spouse, so I can afford to be home. But I think my parents tell me about this all the time because they come from a farming background in a third world country where you go back to work within weeks, if not less than that, of giving birth, and two parents are almost never at home. So my spouse, who's a physician, works from home half the time. I'm at home all the time. Our child gets to see us almost all the time in person. That is a gift. And I'm acutely aware of it every single hour of every day. And the moment that I go back to work in person, that gift, diminishes somewhat. So in some ways, it's a reminder of the way we were kind of meant to live as a family unit before civilization was invented, where a nuclear family unit travels together, is together all the time, is with your loved one, your community all the time. So there's a lot of good things to take away from the pandemic, a hell of a lot of bad things, but the good things include it's an opportunity to examine lifestyle and what we value in lifestyle versus what we value in terms of maintaining the capitalist infrastructure of society. Maybe from now on, we want to err on the side of quality of life and quality of child rearing and quality of family. I'm hoping that this is the conversation that many people want to have now.
You mentioned your parents live in Toronto. Have they met Harrison yet?
Yes, they have. Yes. Luckily, they got their 2 doses, and we've had an opportunity to see them. That was important because our parents are in their late 80s. And one of the reasons I was in the fetal position is there's a non-zero chance my parents will die before ever seeing their grandchild. So made sure that happened.
For sure. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that I had. Thanks so much for taking the time, and hope you enjoy your second Father's Day with the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, have a good one. Bye.